What's up, guys? This is Austin. There's Thomas. Here again with Coach's Compound. Today we're going to go over the back squats and the front squat and how you should do it and how you should incorporate it into your training. It's going to be a good one today. So when it comes to the back squat and the front squat, just like in the previous video we went over with the air squat, we always want to start with the unweighted movement and get good at that functional movement, being able to just air squat perfectly before you want to add load, aka a barbell or the weights onto your back or into the front rack position. So before you even start back squatting, make sure your air squat, is on point. So just like in the last video again, we talked about feet placement. We want to see generally, we'll call this 0 to about 15, 20 degrees out. Having your feet splayed out a little bit is going to be perfectly fine. In the cases of, let's say, a heavy back squat, perfectly straightforward feet is not going to be the most efficient for most people because they probably don't have that great of ankle dorsiflexion. Okay? So remember, 0 to about 15 to 20 degrees out to the side is going to be perfectly fine. And while you're going down, you want to have your knees tracking out over your toes. So we'll have a video of Thomas going through all this. You can see how his knees are following over where his toes are, and his knees are being pushed out on the way down rather than caving in. So when you have an athlete that is chronically caving in their knees, oftentimes what is happening is after years of practicing volleyball, basketball, whatever sport it may be, and they've built this movement pattern of knees caving in. Now when they're squatting, they are used to when their knees and hips are flexed to break that knee. So it's called knee valgus. So what we want to do is most of the time just actually telling them to focus on it is going to be perfectly fine. You might find that they have some, like a lack of glute activity, not the fact that their glutes aren't firing. If their glutes weren't firing, you wouldn't be able to stand. Okay, so saying glute activity, just saying get a band around their knees and push their knees out will be enough for their body and their mind to understand, oh, okay, knees out in the bottom of a squat. So just like in the deadlift video, you can take your PVC pipe, or this is a broomstick, and you can put it on your back like this. You want to have your hand over top the end of it so that your fist is not on the lower back. That'll oftentimes actually mess up the kind of the cueing for this. So head, mid-back, and then lower back / top of your butt. Just like in a deadlift, when you could hinge forward and have it not move, same thing applies with the back squat. You can see here, we can squat down here and stand up, and you can feel when you start to move your spine. You can feel your neck starting to flare, you can feel your shoulder starting to round, you can feel your lower back starting to round as well. So having this as a warm-up is going to be a great idea before back squatting because we want to work on the technique before we add load to it. So have your class, everyone grab a PVC pipe. We're going to do 10 perfect squats with a PVC pipe on your back. And that'll be a great warm-up for everyone to know exactly what's going on with their spine. When you are sitting up for the back squat, it's important to talk about bracing as well. We have a video on this of diaphragmatic breathing, which goes over bracing as well, but very important when it comes to anything that has a load on your back or will put a load on your back in general. Making sure that the spine is going to be perfectly straight in its neutral zone, and tight in the front, tight in the back is going to be of utmost importance so you don't deviate at all. Having the abs tight and the butt tight is generally going to suck down both sides of it, but it's important to add in, we'll call, instead of abdomen, we'll call the diaphragm. So we'll have a little sequence here. You have your athlete land on his back, his or her back. They point their toes down. Yep. So this is going to be simulated just by standing when you're actually standing up, so no need to stand on your tippy toes. Tell them to squeeze their butt. And you want to keep all these things the whole time. So once I tell you to do something, just keep it. Squeeze your butt. You can rest your hands. Okay, so you need to teach them how to breathe through their belly specifically. Their chest shouldn't move at all, so only inflate your stomach. Good. You can see I made like almost like a pregnant belly. Keep going. Do a few, yeah, do a few breaths. Only breathe into your belly. Good. Okay. This next one, I want you to breathe all the way in, breathe all the way out, all the way. Suck your belly to your spine. Suck, suck, suck. There we go. Make the C shape. Squeeze here, like if I'm going to punch you. Good. And then breathe through your nose, but don't let this inflate. Good. There we go. Right here, Everything is extremely, extremely tight. His diaphragm is complete. You can keep breathing. Your diaphragm is completely flexed at this point, which is going to, and then the diaphragm is the belt of the human body. It goes all the way around his trunk. So making sure that that is all tight is going to be very important. If you notice how I had him doing pregnant belly breathing, things like that, and then I told him to suck it all the way, or push all the way out. He made that C shape, almost like he was like an Instagram model kind of thing. But then he squeezed his abs after that as well, and breathed. It wasn't. Notice how it wasn't a pregnant belly. It expanded a little bit, but it wasn't nearly as big as his normal breath. You're going to feel a lot of pressure in your abdomen area when going through this, and you're going to notice that you can't do this forever. Like you're gonna pass out if you hold this for minutes at a time. That's why it's very important when it comes to like 1 rep maxes, 2 rep maxes. The lower sets or the lower reps, you can hold it the whole time. But if you're doing a set of like 10 to 20, you're gonna probably do 2, take a breath again, and do it again. Just keep going. Do 2 breath, things like that. But learning how to go through this sequence laying down and then standing up is going to be very, very important when it comes to actually adding load to the back squat. All right, so now we're going to start going over the back squat with Tommy here, and then I'm going to go over for the front squat, or Tommy's going to go over the front squat with me. So when actually approaching the barbell, I know it seems silly, but you need to think about the fact that this could potentially injure you. This needs to be respected in the fact of you don't want to just haphazardly walk up to the weight with rounded back and everything, not a neutral core spine, and you just pick up your 2 rep max, 1 rep max or whatever, and then go from there. You always want to make sure that when you're approaching the barbell that you're approaching it with intent and a neutral spine. Okay? So just like every other video we've talked about, making sure the rib cage is down, butt is through before you even start the back squat. So Tommy's going to walk up to the bar. He's going to get underneath. Looking at here, notice right here, he's already straight. He's not all the way rounded, and he's going to stand up. Take 2 to 4 steps back. Okay, in this position. First, with the barbell placement on his upper back, this is called a high bar back squat because it is high up on his traps. What I actually want him to do is roll up a little higher so that he can get his wrists as straight as he can, and he's pulling the barbell down into his shoulders. This might seem a little opposite of what you would think, but it's because I want his upper back initiated. I want it actually working. So he's pulling this barbell into his back, trying to keep as straight of a wrist as he possibly can. Right here, this wrist angle. Okay? So, one of the big things, like we just talked about with the bracing, is just imagine that his toes are like laying down, they're pointed. It's shown by just standing normal. He's going to squeeze his butt. He's going to breathe big through his belly here, all the way out. Squeeze, breath again, initiate all this bracing here. Now he's ready to actually squat. Okay? And once you actually practice this, it'll become instant. It happens all the time. You'll know how to do it. When initiating any movement, what you do first, you're going to primarily use the most. So what most people think of is they initiate the squat with their quads. So go ahead and show them what it would look like if they start with their quads. So they're starting with his quads here, which is why we see a lot of times that you have pain above or below the kneecap, generally going to be an overuse injury because you're using your quads too much. So what I want him to do is a slight bow by shooting his hips back a little bit. Notice this very slight degree of angle in his back. That's going to initiate his hips. Okay? Way bigger, way stronger muscles, and then he's going to drop down into the squat after that, and then he comes back up. Don't bounce. He likes to bounce here, so I'm going to teach him sit, stand up. Very, very good. Okay, what I want you to do is go ahead and sit at the bottom of the squat for as long as you can. What I want you to notice here, I'm going to move this around. Okay. Look at his feet right now, okay? About 15 to 20 degrees on his foot going out. His knees are following his foot. So you don't want your knee caving in. That's that valgus that we're talking about, okay? Here, if he was shoeless, you would see that his ankle is not collapsed, and we'll show you in the next video, because I am shoeless in the front squat. You can go ahead and stand up. What it looks like if someone has collapsed ankles, because that is a massive, massive thing that we want to fix when it comes to coaching the squat. Then when you're done, you literally just walk straight into the rack, because if you look to one side, you're generally going to drop one side and drop the weight. Don't want it. So that would be the back squat. A lot goes into it. You want to make sure that you perfect this first and you practice it first, then add some weight. That is very, very stressed, especially if you're a coach.
Get closer. Aquí?
So when it comes to the front squat, the aspect is getting it, this is called the front rack position, when you have the barbell across your clavicle, collarbone, and your shoulder here. A lot of the times the problem that people have is they come into this position where notice that my hand is inside of my shoulder. Okay? This is called internal rotation. So imagine that I'm coming like this, then here, internal rotation. Unstable shoulder. So this can actually be a detriment to your shoulder. Whereas we want in your front rack position, we are external, imagine going like this, then here, external rotation of the shoulder here. So with Thomas, as he's like setting up this position, and then the barbell laying across here is what you are looking for. Oftentimes you'll see people are struggling with this position with going over ankle. This is the wrist.
You know, we can flip-flop if you want.
That's true. The ankle and the wrist are actually very similar. They're almost the same exact joint. Ankle flexibility. This is, I said it again, wrist flexibility. Wrist flexibility is actually one of the biggest factors of this position. It's been thought for a long time that it's actually the lat position, or lat flexibility. If they can bring their elbow up to their head like this is lat flexibility right here. Most people can do this. So their lats are plenty flexible, it's just the wrists might not be flexible enough. And we'll show you a test that you can do for the wrist. Okay? So making sure that your athletes are here, and oftentimes this can be shown by having your athletes maybe stretch their pecs beforehand. So if I was going to take Tommy's pec, which since you watched the anatomy video, you know it's right here, I would pin it and then stretch it here. Oftentimes, this can be a kettlebell, you can put a ball here. This right here will help that external rotation of the shoulder joint, because the pec internally rotates the shoulder. So after we've stretched that, getting into the external rotation should be easier because the pec isn't as tight. Lots of fun stuff. So as you can see in this video right here, Thomas is going down. He's purposely squatting with bad form. Most people, when they start the back squat, like we said, they flare their butt out like a nice Instagram model or stripper here, and then they go down and they wink their butt at the end. Most of us as coaches have heard of the butt wink, and there's a couple different things that are floating around the Instagram sphere or YouTube sphere about what causes the butt wink. Is it the hamstring flexibility? I can tell you a really quick test. Can you touch your toes? It's not hamstring flexibility for most people, okay? What actually happens most of the time is, number one, people don't know that they're doing it. If Tommy was doing it, like in this video, and I told him, hey, instead of tucking your butt under, maybe try to keep it a little more neutral. Like as he's squatting, I could literally like touch his belly and tell him to like suck it in a little bit, and he'd probably fix it. And then you'd be like, okay, let's do 5 perfect reps like this. Good job, you just fixed your butt wink. But you can also find that ankle flexibility is one of the huge reasons that people are butt winking. As you go down, if we don't have enough ankle dorsiflexion, which is when you are bending forward like this, then you are not going to be able to properly sit your hips at the bottom of the squat. Therefore, you're going to be a little further back. And in order to like achieve full depth, you're going to have to move your spine into what's called a posterior pelvic tilt. So ankle flexibility is probably the #1 reason that you'd find for a butt wink. And when it does come down to it, there's a huge debate whether or not it's a big deal or not. I think we need to think about the pelvic movement And so think about this is your spine right here. These are two vertebrae, and they are just constantly moving under load. This is you're doing 5 by 5 and just moving every single time at the bottom. That is going to aggravate your disc. That is going to aggravate the joints there. So whether or not you agree that that is true or not, you do have to agree that the spine is literally flexing. It is moving. And that is going to make a change to the spine in some way. So what we have people do, instead of going all the way down and butt winking, is let's say I had Thomas go to slightly below parallel rather than all the way down. He's going to fix that problem. So if I was squatting and I'm going down, and if I go this low, that's when I butt wink. I would just tell my athlete, okay, let's have you go super slow down and find out exactly where they butt wink. Okay, right there, you butt wink. Go up a little bit, stop right there. We're going to have you do a box squat or a ball squat onto that position until their body is used to it. And then once they're used to it, doing it perfectly, that's usually going to work their mobility where they'll be able to actually go a little bit deeper and go all the way down and be perfectly safe doing it. So when it comes down to it, butt wink, do we think it's a big deal? Yes, especially when you're adding big loads or high loads and a high volume of reps. That movement of the spine is not going to be beneficial for it. So do your best to stay away from the butt wink. So here's a quick assessment for the wrist, for the ankle, the wrist that we were talking about earlier to see if I almost said it again, to see if the wrist is the problem for the front squat. So just like we went over in the air squat video, you're gonna have your tape measure lined up at a rig or some kind of flat surface. You're gonna have your athlete, in my case Thomas, put whatever his longest finger is at 5.5 inches for men, 4.5 inches for women. Those are just the standards. Okay. Here, Thomas is in this quadruped position right here. He's gonna try to keep his shoulders completely neutral here and straight. He's not gonna favor one shoulder versus the other. And what he's gonna do, he's gonna bend at his wrist and touch his shoulder to the rig. There we go. So usually the only reason that you'd find someone cannot do this is, let's say, in my case actually, if you've caught a clean wrong, oftentimes this will jam up those joints there and cause you not to be able to have, this is called wrist extension. You're not gonna have as good a wrist extension, which is you can see in that front rack position there. So obviously do both sides and you can see how their flexibility is in the wrist joint to see, oh, that's the problem with your front squat versus maybe actually the lat is the problem. It's definitely possible. So now the talk comes down to sets, reps, volume, intensity of the back squat, front squat, how often do I squat, and usually when people start, what do you think is like the most common for squatting?
A 5 by 5.
Yeah, probably, I think Mark Bell made the 5 by 5 kind of just like end all be all squatting. If you see someone beginning squatting or like you're at the Globo gym, they're probably doing a 5 by 5.
Globo gym.
And most people have just found that like that's the only way to squat.
The only way to do it. If you're touching a barbell,
you better be.
It's a 5 by 5.
Which, when it comes down to it, I love the 5 by 5. I think for beginners, actually a 5 by 5 is a great way to go. Especially the higher reps. Usually it's going to be a lower intensity, especially if you're starting. When you're just starting, of course you want to start low intensity. Please do not walk into a CrossFit gym, walk into some other gym and load more. Yeah, Planet Fit, no dropping the weights. Load more weight than you've ever squatted before for five reps. Usually the first 6 months to a year of CrossFit or exercise like weight training is just neurological changes, meaning that you're not physically getting stronger because your legs are getting stronger. It's your body is getting used to 5 by 5. And that's where it comes down to, like, the 5 by 5 is really good for a set time. How long do you think people are usually like 5 by 5ing for?
Probably 6 or 7 years, most people.
Exactly. That is like, and it's funny because the way the body works is it always wants to adapt to the next stimulus. So let's say you do 5 by 5 for a cycle, which is usually 6 to 8 weeks, 6 to 12 weeks. phenomenal. You probably got pretty strong. But then after that, you either want to go back to a hypertrophy phase, which we'll go over in a whole nother video, which means gaining mass, gaining muscle in your legs, which would be higher reps, lower load, generally. And then, or it could go on to even more of a max strength phase, meaning that, let's say instead of a 5x5, you're doing a 7x3, you're doing a 6x4. There are people that do 8x2s, things like that. It's generally going to be, you want your reps to be generally around 24 total reps, so a 6x4 that is 24 reps total. What days do you think they should probably squat?
Monday and Friday.
So what would be like the differences between those days? Like,
so maybe break out some back squat on Monday.
Okay.
Do some 5x5 with that.
Okay.
And then of course you can only do front squats on Friday for front squat Friday.
Of course.
Hit a 6x4 on that. So you're kind of mixing it up a little bit, but you're still maintaining that cycle.
Yeah, I think that 2 times a week is probably, because we talked about the air squat video, like you squat so often, like we're literally like squatting to sit down on this. It's so important to kind of generalize yourself and get used to the back squat. So 2 times a week is going to be a good call for most people. And if you want to learn anything more about, let's say, sets, reps, volume, intensity, I definitely recommend the book The Scientific Principles of Strength Training by Chad Wesley Smith and the dudes over at Juggernaut Training Systems. They have a lot of books. There's a lot of books out there about programming, but generally, I mean, a 5x5 for 2 months, a 6x4 for 2 months, maybe a 10x10, a 4x10 actually, maybe. That's going to be for hypertrophy, more mass gaining. That's going to be close to a year of squatting worth, and that's going to be purely enough where your body's going to become adapted over that time, and you're going to get really strong. So if you want to know more than, like, let's say a year, if you want to be in this game forever, as you should, definitely look into more of the programming stuff, which we'll make a video soon enough about programming, but that should be a good place to start.
Yeah.
So today, guys, went over the back squat, went over the front squat. What are some takeaways you think that we should talk about? Back squat, what do you think is the most important thing?
Watching your spine and seeing where you start.
Yeah.
And then working from the ground up once you have that covered.
I think if you've squatted long enough, you've probably felt your back tweak a little bit. I know I have, and a lot of times it just you become so used to squatting that you don't even think about it anymore, and the next thing you know, you're going into posterior pelvic tilt, anterior pelvic tilt, and then there it is. So I think Tommy's completely right.
Snap City.
Snap City all day. Is you want to keep that spine nice and straight and go over the bracing, like literally practice that. And then, tune in for the next videos. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. If you like our videos, if you think Tommy's really cute and funny, definitely subscribe to our channel here. And thanks for watching, guys. Remember, guys, stop searching, start coaching. Okay. There we go. Yeah.